What he has said during the campaign is quite likely would be substantiated at least to some extent. So, for example, his threats about imposing trade sanctions and also his idea about rethinking the One China policy, as well as being more aggressive towards Chinese occupation of the islands in the South China Sea, as well as the naval bases being built there. So it looks like we are in for a potential period of instability.
You mentioned this period of instability. So what is the feeling among political leaders, military leaders, and business leaders about how to deal with Donald Trump? Are people a little bit unsettled right now in China?
Now, a lot of people have been anticipating the Trump presidency with a lot of expectations. Also, we are definitely embracing a lot of uncertainties. Now, with regard to China, two big things jump out from the campaign trail. One is President Trump said he would name China a currency manipulator on day one. Second, he said he would put on very high tariffs, in excess of 35% on Chinese imports into America. Obviously, if these two things happened, it would really threaten U.S.-China bilateral relationship. But China doesn't really qualify as a currency manipulator. The U.S. Treasury had 3 criteria on which to evaluate any country, whether they're a currency manipulator or not. China at this point doesn't really qualify. In terms of tariffs on Chinese imports into America, we know many American companies have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in China. And if tariffs were put on Chinese imports into the U.S., it would really threaten U.S. interests first and foremost.
Donald Trump and One China policy. Donald Trump has said One China is open to negotiation. We know that he had that phone call with the Taiwan president, Tsai Ing-wen. By doing that, has that really stoked nationalism and anger in China?
Trump talking about the One China policy being up for discussion is going to be very provocative. But I think that's a part of, what Willy was saying, this general instability, right? Nobody really knows what to expect from a Trump presidency, partly because you have Trump, who has been very aggressive on foreign policy in various ways. But you also have his prospective cabinet, some of whom agree with him on these issues and some of whom have not. Until we actually get into the presidency a little bit, we're not going to know exactly who's making the decisions, whose views are going to prevail.
Regarding the Taiwan issue, of course, both his advisors and as well as advisors from the earlier administrations have been telling him that the One China policy have been the cornerstone of stable China-U.S. relations for 4 or 5 decades. So I think Donald Trump's position might be just psychological warfare. He is just raising an extreme position from which he might do a bit of climbing down if the Chinese were amenable to making other compromises, for example, regarding North Korea and the South China Sea.
It's interesting you use the phrase psychological warfare, because it could be argued that he's been using one platform in particular to do that, which is Twitter. Wanted to get your thoughts from all of you about Donald Trump and his Twitter diplomacy. He sends out these tweets just harshing against China on trade, on South China Sea, on One China policy. I mean, how far could it go?
The important thing to remember is that whenever both sides are talking on this issue and on every issue, they're speaking to both an international and a domestic audience at the same time, and that makes things very tricky, right? You have, on the U.S. side, a domestic audience that is really spurred by these aggressive foreign policy comments, and on the Chinese side as well, right? And it's quite possible that leaders on both sides don't actually hold those very strong beliefs, but for various reasons, they feel the necessity to indulge in them, right? And then you're getting into a very dangerous game.
We have to really consider what is actually at stake here. If you think about the U.S.-China relationship, it is the single most important bilateral relationship in the whole world, right? These are the two most powerful nations in the world. Bilateral trade between China and the U.S. actually reached $500 billion US. So, before we get into any political confrontation, let's think about the importance of the financial, economic, and people-to-people relationships. We cannot throw out the beneficial side of the relationship. Remember, China and the U.S. economically are partners, but strategically, they're competitors.